What's up, everybody? Welcome into Tom Curran's Patriots Talk podcast, joined as always by the Senator, Phil Perry. He's absolutely indefatigable. What do we have today? Well, we got a preseason game on Thursday. We want to try and define for folks out there what a quarterback competition looks like, because continually we seem to have some confusion out there as to what a competition is and is not. We're going to set you straight on that. Also, training camp all-stars, offensively, defensively, who has opened eyes, and we're going to get you a potpourri in the very last block. All that and more on Tom Curran's Patriots Talk podcast. Coming at you.
World champion, and there ain't nothing you can do about it.
Hey, folks, I think you might find this kind of fun. Usually at practice, it's myself and Phil, real close by, and Mike Reese, who, we've been together 25 years covering this team. So I always want to sidle up to Reese. We actually exchanged notes a little bit during practice. Did you see this? What did it look like on that? It's extremely valuable to play in, play out, exchange notes. But when Mike Reese said, ew, on Monday afternoon, I thought he had caught me doing something. And I said, oh, yeah. And he goes, no, I was talking about the play. I was like, oh. He goes, why? What happened? I said, I just licked my phone. And Phil overheard this. And Phil was outraged. Phil?
Yeah, justifiably so. I mean, it is one of the grossest things that anybody owns is our phones.
The thing was dirty.
You took your tongue right to it. And I go, why would you do that? What'd you say?
It was dirty.
And I said, yeah, dummy.
So,
and then it was only then that you realized, oh yeah, might not have been the best idea.
Look, there was a lot on it. I don't know what I ate on the way to practice. I can't remember, but I had some sticky stuff on it. Looked like glazed, like honey dew. Glazed,
I'm glad I didn't see
donut
it.
Stuff.
I'm just glad I didn't see it. There's all kinds of articles out there that people can search to figure out exactly how dirty your phone is. And it sounds like your phone was even dirtier than most. And yet still you felt the best way to wash that thing off was to just use your mouth. You would think after the last year, what we've all been through, year plus, that we'd all be a little bit more careful about how we're living life. But
I maintain that the more germs that I take in, the more alert my body is in seeing them come. My body is never not on alert. It never is saying this guy's pretty smart and he makes reasonable decisions as to what he'll get himself into. And as a result, they're always on alert. So they see the phone coming up to the tongue. They're like, okay, here we go. White blood cells rally.
That immune system thing is what all the grossest people on the planet argue when they get caught doing something like that.
Have you ever seen Giardi? Giardi was constantly sick. He was a neat freak. He was always killing germs left and right. Mike Giardi.
I'm not saying you're wrong. It's just, it is disgusting.
It's tough to watch in real time.
Disgusting.
All right. What's been interesting to watch in real time has been the very obvious quarterback competition going on in Patriots camp. Now, we've got people out there who cover the team for large outlets, i.e. Ben Volen from the Boston Globe, who continues to assert that there is not a quarterback competition going on in Foxborough. I'm not sure how Ben defines it, but what I want to do is when you're getting information into the populace from a large place that doesn't seem to indicate exactly what's going on the field, we need to correct that. I don't know how you define a competition, folks, but when you have two players at the same position who the staff is working with the same personnel on a regular basis and orchestrating the reps so that these guys are doing the same thing against the same players and with the same players, then they're measuring something. And if one is outperforming the other on some key indicators, then that's worth noting. And that is what has gone on through the first 11 practices of Patriots training camp with the rookie Mac Jones and the veteran Cam Newton. Phil, what have we seen since last Thursday when we last spoke to folks from the two quarterbacks, and what's your appraisal of where things are? And can I do a Felger here? I'm going to give you what I think. I think you've got really competent quarterback play from both guys since last Thursday. and not otherworldly, but enough to make you say, that's working okay.
Yeah, I would maybe pull back a little bit just because I might just have a higher bar for Cam Newton, not only because he's a veteran, but also because he showed us on Tuesday of last week. So we're going back a ways now, that he could be clearly, definitively the best quarterback on the field for the Patriots if he were able to continue to string practices together like that one.
Like that one.
Right. And we said it at the time. I don't know if it was sustainable. I predicted at the time that it probably was not. And it hasn't been. So I think he's taken a step back. And I do think there is a discernible difference still, Tom. It's not to the same degree that it was early in camp, where you had Cam Newton occasionally choking the life out of the football for multiple seconds behind center. But it is just a little bit slower. And I would point to the last couple of days. They did 2 straight days of practice since we last potted on Sunday and Monday. Cam Newton's taken what I would call 4 sacks over the stretch of those practices, which has been more than Mac Jones. And I still do think there is some hesitation and some staring down that happens with him. For instance, 2 plays involving Devin McCourty, where I think McCourty's just there and he's reading his eyes. One on Sunday, where he just stepped, right in front of Jacoby Myers and was able to pick it off in a 7-on-7 drill. And then on Monday, it was actually a pass that was completed to Kendrick Bourne, but McCourty and Jalen Mills, who were both in the area, celebrated it like it would have been the biggest hit of camp, because it would have been, because McCourty just read where Newton was going to go with the football, and he was right there. He just he had to step away to let Bourne catch it so that there wasn't a violent collision. So I think we still see those things more frequently from Newton. That said, he's still up first usually, Tom, and he does get more reps with the one. So if they started a game, if they play a game tomorrow, which they're going to in a couple of days here, he's going to be the first guy out there. And if you had to peg it, he would be the guy right now. But I just think Mac Jones is building some momentum.
To give people maybe an illustration of what we're looking at. In 11-on-11s, for instance, Monday, they had a competitive session at the end, and they gave Cam Newton out there with the ones toward the end of practice, music up, drive the field. They were going to give some first downs, so that it progressed. Here's what we'll see with Cam. Run game. Then he had a ball slapped down by Kyle Van Noy. Then I believe he was complete. But basically, a few solid in cuts. The slap down by Van Noy is probably one of every 4 plays where you're going to see something that you're like, well, that's not a good play. So in training camp, we're not seeing a steady diet of Cam Newton ineptitude. That to me is very important to note, because when we talk about this competition, while Mac Jones is far above where you expected him to have been, far above, and would challenge for the starting position if all things were equal, which I don't think that they are, Cam Newton has been competent enough that he has not come back to Mac Jones significantly. It's probably every 4th play from Newton, 4th throw, that you're like, nah, it's not what you're looking for. With Mac Jones, who ran the same thing, and this was very noteworthy, and Phil pointed this out. We were both looking at this. Cam came down the field with the offense, and then going back the other way, it was Brian Hoyer with the 2s and the 3s, and that's usually something that Mac Jones has been picking up to give him extra reps. He didn't do it. I'm like, has our guy been relegated? Or, what's going on here? Why is the rookie standing there and not involved? What they were actually doing, Phil surmised, was they were giving the first offense a rest so that he could come down the field again with the ones the other way, turned on the music. They did so. A better session in that 11-on-11s, ones against ones, than Cam Newton had. That simple. Phil, I could see you perusing some notes.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the back and forth, and that is basically how it went down. You're right. It does seem like, I don't know if they're trying to go play for play, the exact same call on the first snap that Cam had on the first call for his first snap, but it's definitely similar, and they definitely have things that they're trying to work on in each and every practice. And so you're seeing them get to do the same things. And I would say the one thing that stood out to me yesterday, and yesterday we're just going off the freshest practice in our minds, but one thing that Mac Jones did to to avoid some of the sacks that Cam Newton took was he actually got out on the move and made some plays on the move, which impressed me a little bit. And I think both guys, Tom, it's interesting to your point about how neither one has been a catastrophe. Both guys have kind of dipped into their tool belt in ways that I wasn't necessarily expecting, meaning like Cam Newton has had some tremendous touch passes over the course of the last few practices, which, people that watched him last year would say, well, are you sure that was that guy? But yeah, down the sideline to James White, deep down the sideline the other day to Christian Wilkerson, deep down the middle of the field yesterday to Jonnu Smith. So you're seeing touch from Cam Newton, you're seeing mobility from Mac Jones, and those are obviously not the hallmarks of either quarterback's game, but we're seeing it.
And what has to be emphasized with Newton is, to me, the running game and the surety that you get from him in the running game. You understand it's 11 on 11. And I've said this, for instance, a million times. 3rd and 3, Cam Newton on the field, the playbook's wide open. Might he be a little less accurate on a slant to try and pick up that first down? Yes. Mac Jones would probably throw it better. If you had to put your money someplace, you'd say Mac Jones is going to throw a better ball. But if you want to run read option, or if you want to run a quarterback draw, that page of the quarterback playbook is open to you with Cam Newton. And as a result, that's why I feel that Cam Newton has the leg up for September 12th. And this is important too. When we're talking about a competition at quarterback, it's not a competition to see who takes the first snap of the first game on September 12th against the Miami Dolphins. It's a competition to see who is the quarterback when the chips are down. As they say in the NBA with guys who are coming off the bench, it's not who starts the game, it's who finishes the game. That's what really friggin' matters. And that's what's important at the quarterback position for the New England Patriots. It's not necessarily who starts the season. To me, it's going to be who finishes the season, especially if this Patriots team is in playoff contention, which I think it will be.
And I think to just get into the Newton and why he might still be the starter week one, no matter what kind of momentum Mac Jones is building, you mentioned it. If he doesn't fall off the table so far behind Mac Jones as a passer, if he's able to keep it relatively level, it means you're getting something from him as a passer. And that might be all Bill Belichick needs, because he understands he has such an advantage with Cam Newton in the running game that even if it's a step back, or even 2 step backs from the rookie in terms of what's happening when the ball needs to go in the air, you may say, well, yes, but all of these things on 1st and 2nd down that we love to do with Cam, we can't do with Mac. Now, I would say they can still have a pretty good running game. They've had plenty of good running games in the past with Tom Brady at quarterback, and he was not part of the equation there. It was 10 on 11. So they could do it with Mac Jones and I think be pretty good, but I don't know what the sliding scale is there in Bill Belichick's mind. They could get so much more maybe in the running game with Cam that a step back in the passing game might be okay with him.
And I think too, that there is a personality of the offense that Cam Newton will be able to bring to you as a Patriots team that is more similar to the team they've built. If you want to be a bully, you don't put a 6'2", 218-pound quarterback out there. You put the 6'5", 260-pound quarterback out there and say, try and wrap your arms around these quads a couple times and have fun with that, while we also hit you with slants and seam throws to our 2 tight ends. So again, if you're a Patriots fan and you're not enmeshed in the entire quarterback drama, which really isn't that dramatic, it's just fun, you're happy right now. Because Cam Newton's better than he was in 2020. He's more attuned to things. He's throwing better, throwing much better passes with greater regularity, and he looks comfortable. And Mac Jones, throwing it good enough and running it good enough to be a serious threat to start. And if we peck through, and we're going to hit this later, you know what? Let's hit it now. Mac Jones. He was taken 15th, as we all know. The guy taken second, Zach Wilson, who I didn't really get the concept of how that just was mailed in. Here's what Robert Saleh had to say as Zach Wilson continues to scuffle a little bit in training camp. For most rookies, it's going to get worse before it gets better. It is what it is. There's a lot of things that happen. There's a reason why being a rookie is hard in this league. There was a Hall of Famer yesterday that was inducted, he had a 71 quarterback rating his rookie year. It's not easy to play quarterback in this league as a rookie, especially quarterback. It's going to get worse before it gets better. He's at this point now where he's going to be able to stack up days. We got the utmost confidence in him and his ability to figure out his mistakes, bubbly, 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 bubbly. But what Mac Jones is trying to execute is not easy at all. And that, again, probably underscores, Phil, why Bill's going to be like, you know what, Mac, you did great. You didn't fail. We're just going with Cam here for a while.
And that could be the case. One of the reasons why this is so interesting is that we've never been here before. And I think one of the things that Bill would do in the past at other positions is if it's close between a young guy and an older guy, I'm not sure he always goes with the older guy.
Yeah, you're right.
Because he's looking towards the end of the season. I mean, how many times do we have to hear, extension of the preseason, extension of the preseason, extension of the preseason, that first month of the regular season? Now that season's even longer, it's 17 games. Wouldn't Bill Belichick want to use the early portion of the season to kind of see what he has and get guys experience to see if they can be really helpful down the line? And if that's true at other positions, why shouldn't it be true at quarterback? Or does Bill Belichick just approach it entirely differently this year, Tom, because he just feels like there's more pressure on him and he needs to win these games early in the season? And it's not about building towards the end because you don't know what you have at quarterback, whereas for 20 years you did. And so I think all of those elements make this just such an interesting decision. It's why we can talk about it every day and not get sick of it.
No, and here's one last thing I'll point out when you talk about the last 20 years. When Tom Brady was here and there were quarterbacks like Jimmy Garoppolo or Jacoby Brissett, Ryan Mallett brought in, there was never the level of split reps that you're seeing now. Brady took most of them, most days. So if people think that Mac Jones is taking more reps now to get him work that Cam doesn't need, they're missing the point of what would happen on the regular. You understand what I'm saying? Training camp is to get ready for the season. It's not orientation. It's to get ready for the season. And they're getting ready for the season by splitting reps at that position right now. Concurrence?
Yeah. And
Fair?
Tom Brady felt like he needed the reps. The coaching staff wanted to give him those reps. He knew this was his offense. He built the offense and he still wanted the reps. They're not giving Mac Jones reps with first team guys because Cam's got it down and they just want him to be ready just in case. And Cam is definitely the first, is going to be the starter come the start of the season. I think you're mistaken if you're focusing on the two quotes that Bill Belichick has had this offseason where he said Cam Newton is the starter. Number one, because both of those days, both on draft night when he said Cam's the starter, he also was asked that night, well, what would it take for somebody to take over that top spot from Cam Newton? He would say, well, it's going to be Cam's until somebody plays better, I think was essentially the quote. So, that's leaving the door open. It's not out of the realm of possibility that a first round pick could play better than Cam Newton. We've also heard, Josh McDaniels say, there's a decision coming. We've heard Bill Belichick say it's going to be a hard decision. I would even put all those quotes to the side and just watch the practice and just watch how they're handling these guys. I think their actions speak volumes. And I think they say more to us than what we're being told at the podium.
All right. So stick with us if you want the straight poop on the regular to tell you exactly what's going on. Also, one more thing before we get on to the offensive and defensive all-stars from camp. How come we have such varied numbers from astute reporters? We got the Jeff Howe from The Athletic, Mark Daniels at Projo. We got Reese, who doesn't do the numbers. I'm certainly leaving folks out who I think highly of. Andrew Callahan, Jimmy McBride at the Globe, Andrew Callahan from the Herald. But why do we have such varied numbers? Hit it.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons
Phil does the numbers for us. Let me just say that. Phil and I had an agreement at the beginning. I'm going to do the overview. I'm going to do the takeaways for the whole thing. Phil is going to chronicle the quarterbacks because we knew that needed somebody who didn't have ADD. Phil was on that.
Yeah, I think the reason there's a discrepancy, and I've gone back and forth with people on Twitter about this, because I think there is real confusion, and I get it, because we're all watching the same thing and we're all watching it very closely. I think there's two things that lead to a discrepancy in the numbers. Number one is there are periods of practice that some people believe are competitive and others don't. So there are going to be practices where Cam Newton, for one reporter, may have 20 competitive reps in team periods, and somebody else may have 8 or 9. So that's number one. It's just how you see the practice, and do you view whatever the reps are as competitive? Usually,
What do you define a competitive rep as? For me, it's live on the line or with thudding and coverage that goes through the reception, or at least to the ball's arrival on a non-padded day. So the corner, if it's an out, the corner is trying to bat it away. That to me is competitive. And then there's a tick down from that where everything looks competitive, but the defensive back kind of puts his hands down and lets the ball be completed. Is that where you are on those?
Yep, I would agree with that. And then I would say there are periods of practice, and Belichick even noted this before one practice. He said, I don't think we're judging, quarterbacks off of one play, especially there are periods of practice that are kind of geared towards the offense. Meaning there are clear periods of practice where the first team offense is going to be out there, and you're going to see guys like, Cody Davis playing free safety, and Henry Lange playing middle linebacker, and Nick Thurman as the defensive tackle. And you're looking at it and you're saying, okay, because they're working off of cards. Those periods are really geared towards the defense or towards the offense. It might be 11 on 11. There might even be some thudding, but that's for the offense to get stuff down for a little bit later in the practice when things get really competitive. So what I try to do, especially in these fully padded practices, is gauge the top guys against the top guys. The other thing that I do that not everybody does is I watch the line. I try to really closely right up until a pass is thrown. And if I think there has been a sack or there should have been a sack on the play, and usually only when it's obvious is when I do it. You've got yesterday, for instance, Josh Uche standing next to Cam Newton with nobody in front of him, just waiting for him to throw the football. He ended up throwing an interception to Adrian Phillips. You can look at my line from practice the other day. I didn't give Cam Newton an interception there because I counted that sack as a sack. I mentioned it in our write-up, our quarterback report, that, Cam let it go, and I described the whole situation. But there are going to be times where I don't have completions or interceptions because I will include sacks. So you'll see sacks quite often in my quarterback lines. And I just feel like that's the best way to gauge it, because if a guy's holding it back there for 8 seconds and he would have been sacked by 3 different people and he throws a touchdown pass, that to me is not a touchdown pass.
Not a touchdown pass. Not a touchdown pass. Good stuff. Hope people are up to date on that and they appreciate that, because it is hard. If you're sitting out there and you're trying to figure out what the hell's going on there, why do these guys, we're all watching the same practice, have such varied numbers? That's how we're giving it to you over here at the NBC Sports Boston outlet. All right, we're going to segue now over to what I like to call the second block. And we're going to hit you some all-stars. And before I get into this, Phil, my 5 guys on offense and defense are interesting in that their recent ads, and I know that the roster has turned over quite a bit, but a bunch of these guys are draft picks. And it just really shows that the Patriots could be headed in the right direction after a fallow period, shall we say, from 2013 to 2019. So I'm going to lead you off with my offensive all-stars. I got Isaiah Wynn, N'Keal Harry, Mac Jones, Sony Michel, and Kendrick Bourne. Thoughts? It's tough to do the offensive line, but I think Wynn has been out there every day. I know he's been out there every day. And in the one-on-ones, we've seen him show up pretty well. Feelings on him?
I would agree with that. I think he's played well. The key for him is just always, can he stay healthy? Because when he's out there, whether it's one-on-ones or the 11 on 11s, the pressure is not usually coming off his side. And if it is, it's a free safety who's unblocked, who's probably the responsibility of the quarterback. So I like that one. I'm also going to give Shaq Mason an honorable mention because we haven't noticed him much. And for offensive linemen, that's usually a very good thing. You haven't seen a lot of Larry Guy or Devon Godshaw breaking through the pocket and getting to these quarterbacks. He's also been good in the one-on-ones. When he and David Andrews work together, it's really interesting because neither of them are huge guys, but we've seen them go 2-on-2 with Godshaw and Guy, who are 2 of the biggest guys on the team. And they just work so well together, and they're both so athletic. And Andrews is dealing with an injury now, but they're really fun to watch because they deal with those twists and those stunts so well. They communicate so well. So a couple offensive linemen should make the list here.
All right. Harry, that's obvious. And he continues to string days together and make outstanding plays and doesn't miss. So I think we're up to date on Harry. Mac Jones, I think we're up to date on Mac Jones. Sony Michel. Phil wants to cut him. No, he wants him to be traded, or he thinks he might be, because there's a glut of running backs. And that's fair because you can't have a million running backs and a million tight ends and a million wide receivers and be 3 quarterbacks deep, which the Patriots may end up being, never mind to the offensive line. But he's looked really quick. He's made some outstanding catches. So you can't really deny it. And you like the Kendrick Bourne.
I do like some Kendrick Bourne. I just feel like he's been, outside of one practice where it was rainy and he had a couple of drops, everybody had a hard time catching the football that day. He's been just really solid. And he what's interesting, Tom, is he's a longer guy. He does not work down the field. I can't remember, for instance, a 20-yard catch that he's made down the field. A lot of it is underneath stuff. It's crossing routes, it's comebacks, it's hitches. He's just, I think he could be, really good in that Chris Hogan type of role. Hogan wasn't really a deep threat either, but both pretty good athletes and just sure-handed. And so I like him for this offense right now.
Hogan or Mitchell.
Yes.
In some ways too, Malcolm Mitchell. So it's a great, hadn't even thought of that until you said that. Why don't you hit me with 5 from defense, and I'll chip in the guys that I have too. It's probably going to be some overlap.
I think there is, because to me, there are a few clear standouts. One of them is Adrian Phillips. You could look at this one of two ways. If you're a Patriots fan, you could say, great, we've got a strong safety who's playing awesome. Or you could say, oh no, wait, Adrian Phillips is playing well. Isn't he the guy who's covering the tight ends that we're supposed to be building our offense around? Oh yeah. But he's breaking up passes left and right. He's picking off passes. It feels like every other day. He's just been everywhere. He's just a really smart player. He's really sound, I think, and we're seeing that result in some big plays in camp. So he, to me, is maybe number one. Josh Uche, to me, has been one of their best pass rushers. I would say he and Matt Judon both deserve mention because they both, Tom, have been generating consistent pressure off the edge. And then he's been off and on because he's dealing with a foot issue. But Christian Barmore, when he's on the field and he's playing, he's consistently disruptive. He gets underneath guys in some of these one-on-one drills. I mean, he is quick and strong. You can see why the Patriots gave up as much as they did to shoot way up in the second round to draft that guy.
So those are all guys that I had on my list as well. I also will throw in Carl Davis and J.C. Jackson. Carl Davis, interior pass rusher, came out of Iowa a few years ago. I think he was a 3rd-round pick. He was with the Ravens. But every time they're in one-on-ones, this guy probably could be the strongest guy on the team. I mean, you look at his arms. Like a lot of times you see these interior linemen and their arms are, kind of relative to their bodies, also huge. Carl Davis, for a 305 or 7 or 10 pounder, has Hulk Hogan arms too. So it's just, if he was a bouncer, you wouldn't talk in the bar, period, the entire night, just knowing that guy could launch you somewhere into Piscataway, New Jersey.
He's been really good in the one-on-ones. He does not try to get around people all that often. He's just driving through them. And Tom, he's even bigger than you mentioned because he's one of the biggest guys on the team. He's in that 320-pound range. So what's interesting about him is they want a true nose tackle. I think Devon Godshaw is going to be their guy in that role. But Davis is even a little bit bigger than Godshaw. And so if you want a second guy in case something happens to the first guy, Davis would make a lot of sense. So I like him. And I think, Tom, it's worth mentioning too, like some of the old standbys that we appreciate, but they've made plays too. Is Dante Hightower had a sack on Cam Newton in a goal line period the other day that forced the offense to take a lap. Devin McCourty, who I mentioned earlier, had a pick recently. He's just kind of been in the right place at the right time. That's just the story of his career, basically. So this defense, I think, has a chance to be really good. The one issue I would have is at corner. I think we're going to get to some of those guys next.
Yeah, and doesn't seem to be working so great. This is the topic now, and I got 2 guys at the top of my list. Again, recent draft picks, fairly high, so this goes into the same bucket. Jawan Williams and Yodny Kajust. but Joe on, sometimes in small quarters, he's better, but once you get him on an open field, it's not good.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, right? Last year they started the year and they wanted him on tight ends. Remember, he was on Mike Gesicki, he was on Darren Waller a little bit. It's clear they felt like that was the role that he should be taking. Now they're playing him more at corner, I think, probably in part because Gilmore's not available and he's playing outside the numbers, and I'm not sure he moves quickly enough or fast enough in a straight line to be able to stick with some of these guys. I would put Jalen Mills on this list as well, Tom. You would think just with all the reps that these guys are getting, again, with Gilmore out, it's been JC Jackson on one side. We mentioned him. He's been really good. The other side, it's been either Williams or Mills. And you would think with Mills, who's really been the top number 2, I would say, outside the numbers, you would think he would have run into a handful of impressive plays by this point in camp. We're 11 practices in. I can't think of any. and that might even include the one play where it was a do or die snap. It was the 4th or 5th practice. It was on the goal line. There was a slant to Nelson Aguilar where Aguilar sort of got caught up in maybe Mills's press coverage and Newton's pass went incomplete. And that was the end of the practice, essentially. He was just kind of in the area, and even if we give him credit for that, it's one play in 11 practices. So I think I need to see more from Jalen Mills before I would feel comfortable if I'm Bill Belichick running him out there playing significant snaps.
Agreed. Jalen Mills is going to be interesting to watch in these preseason games as well. All right, block number 3. We're rounding third. We're heading to home. It is Talk Soup. Is Xavier Howard getting a tweaked contract at all a map for Stephon Gilmore? I say no. The reason being, Xavier Howard had more years on his contract for the Miami Dolphins to manipulate. So they could say, look, we'll do this year, guarantee some of it, give you a tiny bump, and we'll do this with next year, fully guarantee it. And if we can, we'll take a look at it after the 2021 season, your health and your performance, and then we'll do something there. So that was enough to satiate Xavier Howard, who, before he got that contract, showed up for a Friday walkthrough and then was on the field for a Saturday practice. And Saturday night, they gave him the deal. In Steph Gilmore's situation, also a cornerback, he doesn't have that latitude at the end of the contract. He doesn't have multiple years. So the Patriots are either going to give him a bump in salary from his $7 million. He's carrying a $16 million cap hit. Or they're going to add a fake year to the contract, like they did with Darrelle Revis way back when, or with Tom Brady in 2019, so that they can give him some incentives that he can perhaps reach, that aren't a reach. And then some other assurances. But Phil, like Xavier Howard, I think that Stephon Gilmore, coming off a quad, has to get on the field for the New England Patriots. I'm sure they've talked about this, but if I'm the Patriots, I want to see him on the field for 2 reasons. 1, he's got the surgically repaired quad, but 2, look, he's a great player. But the 2020 season wasn't great for him. He played 11 games. He wasn't remarkable. And I know the whole defense was down and the corners are somewhat at the mercy of folks around them. But in the 2019 season, he didn't really close on a high. He got lit up by Devontae Parker in the final game of the regular season to the tune of 7 catches for more than 120 yards. And then he comes back last year and he wasn't that great. Is he one of the best corners in the league? Yes. If you are the Patriots, though, and you have a 30-year-old cornerback who wants to be paid that way, i.e. one of the top in the league, then you need to make sure, especially if you're giving an extension in any way, that he's good to go, right?
I agree with you 100%. I give you credit because I feel like you've been saying this since this was even an issue, even a blip on our radar, months ago. You've got to see him. You asked Bill Belichick about it. Do you need to get, he's in the building. So you are seeing him to that extent. It's not like he's holding out and you can't get your hands on him, so to speak. But I would think you want to see him out there running around full speed. I don't even know if it has to be in full pads, Tom, but you'd like to see him have to cover a guy or two before you give him anything. Like and I think what might end up happening here, just because, and it's not because of the Xavier Howard situation, but because of what happened with Tom Brady and Rob Gronkowski in 2018. They both got incentives. They both wanted more and they got incentives, and they just kind of had to take it because they realized there wasn't going to be anything else there for them. And so I think the precedent for the Patriots, at least, has kind of been set there. Now, they did give Brady a straight bump in 2019, and they spread it over a couple of years, as you mentioned. So I guess they could do that with Gilmore. They wouldn't give him as much. They wouldn't give him the $8 million that Brady got, but I think he's probably looking at incentives, and eventually he's just going to decide, oh, it's better for me to just play and try to get these incentives than sit out and incur a bunch of fines. Cause it's, I think it has the potential, Tom, if he really wants to push this, it could get ugly because he's there. If if 2 months from now, he's still saying he's coming back from a torn quad, then what happens? I mean, do you have to go to an arbitrator or something and figure it out legally? Like, well, we thought he could play and he said he couldn't. And then it turns into like a Jonathan Fanene situation. Like, that's not what you're looking for. So I think it's going to be incentives for him, unfortunately, because that's never what the player wants.
And everything right now seems to be above board. And what I would take from this is to just refer back to is when Stephon Gilmore spoke to Josina Anderson and said that they hopefully could find some, quote, common ground, end quote. That means it's a guy who is understanding that he's not going to win. Common ground means I'm going to meet you in the middle someplace. So he's going to have to meet the Patriots in the middle, and the Patriots are going to have to move to meet him in the middle as well. And so far, everything that's been said by the staff, whether it's Bill Belichick or Mike Pellegrino, has been extremely complimentary towards Stephon Gilmore and the role that he's had as, quote, Coach Steph, end quote, from Mike Pellegrino. And for Gilmore, he's there. He's taking part. He's doing the things, and he's talking about common ground. So my feeling is this will be solved before September 1. I figured it might be done when we initially talked before the end of the first week of training camp, because I figured he'd want to get out there. But again, does a 30-year-old corner who keeps himself in excellent shape need these reps against Gunner? Not necessarily. So there you go. Hunter Henry, not taking any reps. He's going to be down for a couple of weeks. Shoulder injury suffered. The biggest takeaway for me on the Hunter Henry thing isn't that he's going to miss a drastic amount of time. It's that I think he got hurt in a one-on-one rep just blocking. And that would give me just a little bit of pause about the durability of Hunter Henry, who's not injury riddled, but he's a little injury prone. Phil?
Yeah, and he had one big one a couple of years ago that was lower body. It was different, but it appears to have kind of changed just his career trajectory. His first few years in the league, people were looking at him as being one of the next great tight ends in football. And he's been good. He's been obviously been good enough to get a big contract this offseason, but he hasn't been, in that top tier of guys like Kittle and Kelsey and Gronk. So I'm with you. I would worry about it anytime Hunter Henry and the word injury are in the same sentence. And Tom, I do think, Bill Belichick spoke about this week, and he said, hey, he's day to day, but he was here. So to his credit, he was here for OTAs and minicamp. Obviously, Jonnu Smith wasn't. Jonnu Smith was here for minicamp because it was mandatory, and he got hurt within like the first 20 minutes of his first practice. So Hunter Henry does have an advantage in terms of having a little bit more experience in the system than some other guys, but he's still going to be missing critical reps at a position that's really hard to learn when you're joining a new offense. So I think this could be a relatively significant bump in the road for him in terms of how quickly he gets acclimated. I don't think this is Randy Moss. You can miss everything and then show up week 1 and be a dominant player. It's just not how I see it.
One thing that folks would like to know, I'm sure, is what's behind him. Matt LaCosse, who the Patriots signed 2 years ago as a free agent, has been out there. He's better than Ryan Izzo. Let's leave it at that. Quinn Nordin has hit a hot streak as Nick Folk has been sidelined with an injury over the last few days. I am a huge Nick Folk guy because he just does nothing but hit the fairway with 260-yard drives every single time. But Quinn Nordin has not been bad at all with a perfect practice on Friday last week.
Yeah, he was money inside the stadium, and really one of the only benefits of practicing inside the stadium is some of the special team stuff. We've heard that before. So if you're a punt returner and you're trying to read punts off somebody's foot in the stadium with the stands there, or you're trying to kick field goals. And so, listen, there was no real rush. And I thought it was interesting. Belichick was asked about Nordin, and he went out of his way to mention that, There's no rush. He was asked about him on Monday. So it was a few days after he had this big day, 10 for 10, including 250 plus yarders for Quinn Nordine. But Tommy's getting a bunch of opportunities because Folk is down, and he's had sort of a steady upward trajectory. His first practice where they let him finish practice with a couple of field goals was not good. He missed at least one badly. And I think he might've missed a couple on the day. It's hard to tell from our angle, but since then, I think he's made pretty much everything that he's been given. So good for him. Big leg. I wouldn't be shocked if he's the guy this year, Tom.
I wouldn't either. But what are you going to do with Nick Folk? You can't just leave a guy like that out. I mean, you release him, somebody's going to take him. Be that as it may, let's move on to another guy who's a specialist. It's Joe Cardona. That's an issue, Phil. Patriots did sign a long snapper this week, correct?
Brian Corey.
We're not going deep on Brian Corey.
No,
we're just not going to do that.
They did sign a guy because it was Dietrich Wise snapping for field goals, and it was Johnny Smith snapping for punts, and neither was very good the other day. No. So they had to get somebody in. So
you don't worry about it until you have to worry about it. It's like the hot water heater. All right, we're going to close it out with a few comments. Guys, we appreciate it. We had some quick comments and reviews. We got some stars in there. First up, Chip from Connecticut, who we appreciate. I love the fact that the number of people who will stop Phil and I out at camp and say, hey, love the pod, or complain that we didn't have it out on time, we appreciate it because it gives us confirmation that we're talking to somebody out there. Phil and I could do this all day long just by ourselves, but the fact that you guys enjoy it, we appreciate it. Chip from Connecticut says, Tom, less than half of the quarterbacks selected in round one succeed in the NFL. Quarterbacks with fewer than 20 varsity starts in college are even less successful. Is there any JV anymore anyway, Chip? But anyway, learning a pro offense is tough. Learning the Patriots, New England's offense is even tougher. Do you think maybe BB is shielding, nurturing Jones with an eye to the future rather than piling on too much too early? Chip, no, I think they're loading it up. And I think that every reason they load it up, or the entire reason they load it up, is the kid finishes everything on his plate every single time they give him more. And he just says, more, please, like Oliver.
I agree. It's all we've seen. They've given him a ton, and they want to see how he can handle it. And I think he's handled it relatively well. And obviously no two situations are the same, right? So less than 20 starts at Alabama, win a national championship. You are, by all accounts, a very intelligent human being, and you're in that system for a long time. That's a little different than, say, Mitch Trubisky not getting a ton of starts and it not working out in the NFL. I think he can feel a little bit differently about one guy versus the other.
You know what I want to ask Mac about, and I realized this, and he's never going to answer it honestly, but ask him, are the guys that you're throwing to now better than the guys you were throwing to last year at Alabama?
How do you think he's going to answer that one?
I mean, they're professionals. So, I mean, they've been in, I mean, if it was Bill Belichick, yeah, I mean, certainly.
He might laugh first. Like, he kind of has that, like,
I don't know. I'd want to stay away from that, but they might have been. Next up, it's Battle and Billy Crossan, who says, it seems like it hurts your heart so much to say good things about Cam Newton without saying something bad 15 seconds later. Guilty as charged. I get he might not be your favorite guy, but he's the best you got. Okay, I will say guilty as charged, Battle and Billy, but it's not that he's not my favorite guy. I like him a lot. I do. Personality's great, charisma, charm. He's honest and open with us, almost to a fault. But he's not the best you got. What I'm accustomed to, and what you're accustomed to if you listen to this podcast, is good football. And I just want to cover a team that looks capable and is trending upward at all times. I understand the merits of Cam Newton as a quarterback for the 2021 Patriots and the things that he can bring to the table. But it's a passing league, and the shortcoming that Cam Newton has is passing accuracy, which, as we've watched and learned over the last 20 seasons, as the Patriots went on an unprecedented run, accuracy and decision-making are the coin of the realm in the Patriots offense. And those are places that Cam is subpar. So I can't ignore the shortcomings on the field with a guy who is eminently likable and has surprised me with how enjoyable he is to deal with. Phil.
I would just say we give you a heaping helping of good and bad, I think, every day. Whether it's on Early Edition, Boston Sports Tonight, the quarterback report that I do, it's not just, I think people feel like we're picking on Cam Newton. There's plenty to to pick at when it comes to Mac Jones. And earlier in this podcast, we're talking about Cam Newton making touch throws, or, Cam Newton's ability to run the football and how that helps the Patriots offense. This is just how it is. You have two quarterbacks who, quite frankly, listeners, are not upper tier when it comes to the NFL. There's going to be a lot to pick at with either guy, whoever is playing a lot this year. And it may be the position that ultimately holds them back this season. That's just the spot that they're in right now. But it's our job to chronicle it all. So you're not going to get over the top flowery language, I don't think, for either. We're just trying to tell you what we see.
Yeah, it's simple too. I think people believe that we are observing just like they would in terms of having a rooting interest in one guy or the other, being a Cam guy, being a Mac guy. Really, I think from a journalistic perspective, we're trying to tell you what we honestly believe, and then what we believe the Patriots will do primarily. So that's why when people say who's going to be the starter, I usually say Cam Newton, because I believe that's what Bill Belichick will do. What I do with my layperson's appraisal, probably the same thing Bill would do. Phil feels differently, big deal. But we're trying to channel the head coach based upon the expertise we got from the years that we've covered him and tell you what we think is going to happen. What we should happen is a different conversation. At some point, the rubber's going to meet the road and you're going to need a better passer than Cam Newton. And Mac Jones is going to be that guy. But it ain't a rooting thing. And it's not rooting against one guy or the other. Bam! Last one, Phil, from TJ Courchain. The show is informative and funny. I could listen to these two all day.
Oh.
Pats Nation. Bam! From Seoul, Korea. North
Wow.
Korea or South Korea? South Korea? Yeah, he wouldn't have
the Souls in South Korea. Yeah.
Sorry.
We're big in South Korea. I doubt we're big in North Korea, but you never know.
You never know. All right. So my geopolitical shortcomings were highlighted right there. We're going to sign off. Patriots against the WFT on Thursday night. We're going to be back at you on Friday to apprise and appraise you of everything that happened in that game from our vantage point. Goodbye.